best entertainment on the earth. Tune in for Comics with Perch.
Hey everybody, this is Perch. Stan Lee. Of course, Stan Lee made a large number of comics, and of course his contribution varies a little bit depending on who you talk to and how much, say, Jack Kirby did versus Stan Lee, and there's certainly lots of debate there. But Stan Lee, certainly you can't argue that he had a very important role to play where comic books are concerned, and that he, in the grand scheme of things, wherever the kind of the designation sits between himself and Jack and kind of other people, Ditko, Stan Lee made a massive contribution. So I've been reading a lot of the Stan Soapbox columns, and Stan Soapbox, for those who don't know, it was basically he would put some text kind of as an editorial inside the comic books, and he talked about a variety of things. If you've been reading comics lately and you've never seen the Soapbox before, you might think that Stan Lee pretty much only talked about racism and social issues, but the reality is Stan Lee talked about a large number of things, usually the comic business. And then kind of 1 out of 50 or so, he would touch on politics or social issues. And generally speaking, Stan's, when he would touch on those things, they would tend to be things like racism is bad. We don't like that. And hey, we should try and love each other as we are, and not hate each other. And we should let people have different opinions, and we should try and get along. And when we make comics, we try and make them for everyone, and we don't try and exclude anyone. And that's what we should do. It wasn't the deepest thought. It was funny because some of them recently were reprinted, and it's like, here's some deep thoughts from Stan Lee. And the deep thoughts are like, racism is bad, and we shouldn't do it. It's like, I mean, okay, agreed. Like, who are the people who are going to disagree with this? I'm sure there's somebody out there, but not as many as maybe people in comics would believe. So this one, this Soapbox I'm about to read you, is not about racism or social issues, but it's about comics. And I think it strikes a chord that you might appreciate. So it goes, we sometimes receive letters accusing us of publishing too many different titles. What? Sorry. Anyway. A number of fans have said it's too expensive trying to buy all our mags, and they ask us not to be so greedy and to publish less of them. This was in 1960, I think. Anyway, funny. So we thought you might like to hear our side of it. Hey, what is their side of it? The only reason we constantly add new titles is because of you asking for them. Thousands upon thousands of your letters demanded that we give Cap, Shellhead, Namor, and all the others their own magazines. In fact, remember when we tried to discontinue our Hulk some years ago? Your unceasing outcry forced us to bring him back, despite the fact that it imposed a tremendous strain upon our already overworked staff. I like how Stan Lee not just turns around but lays it on thick. Like, you're screwing us by asking for these comics that we're charging you for. And each time we try and publish fewer, and this may hurt a little bit, 25-cent summer specials. Okay. You swamp us with letters demanding more than ever. Personally, we'd be happy to let up a bit. Many of us, including yours truly, haven't had a vacation in years, but our policy was, is, and always will be to give Marveldom what it asked for, and judging by our skyrocketing sales, we're not far from the mark. That's the lowdown, loyal one. We don't want you to spend all your bread on our mags, honest, but so long as the dramatic demand for them continues, we can't turn a deaf ear. Anyway, remember this. No matter how many stories we create each month, our credo will always be the same. Nil nisi optimus. Nothing but the best. Excelsior, Smiley. Okay, so that's Stan Lee's explanation for why they publish so many comics. By the way, I would love to see like a Joe Quesada put something out like that today. It's like, we hear you, complaining about variant covers and 80 comics and constantly like starting new series but then canceling them 5 issues later. And we hear you, but damn it, you demand all these things. You tell us not just 10, not just 20, but 30 variant covers. We don't want to make these variant covers, and we know Every time we say, "Hey, we're going to publish fewer 5.99 comics," you guys tell us, "No, get back and give me. Take our money. You can't take a vacation, Joe Quesada. You have to keep pumping out these books." Anyway, I kid a little bit. It is funny. I find the whole thing pretty funny. I think it's a charming day, right? Listening to that, it doesn't seem like how comic books are today, does it? I think that that obviously Stan Lee is in hype marketing mode. I don't think that there were thousands and thousands and thousands of fans writing in asking for a Namor comic, as evidenced by the fact that Namor, even when John Byrne was on Namor, it just was not selling a huge amount. But regardless, I think look, there's a bunch of things to go on there. I appreciated Stan Lee turning it back around on the customers and saying, "Hey, look, these decisions that we're making because of you." That's charming. I appreciate that. I think whether it's true or not true, it sounds kind of nice to hear someone say that, right? It's quaint. Can't complain too much about it. It's charming. Hearing that we don't want you to spend all your money on us, but you just keep demanding to. It's. I mean, look, none of that would work today, right? I mean, not even close. I don't know. People ask me all the time, should companies publish fewer comics? And the answer is absolutely yes, particularly the big two. I think there are a lot of indies out there, good indies. People ask me all the time, you should promote indies more. And you're right, I should. But one of the things that hurts indies right now is just the sheer volume of Marvel and DC books. For a while, Marvel would publish lots of titles as a strategy to choke out the competition. In this case, though, they were thinking about DC. Today, both Marvel and DC have determined that they can, fit enough content out in the shelves that when Marvel or DC print 80 plus comics in a month, it's not because of, trying to beat the competition. It's not Marvel trying to beat DC or DC trying to beat Marvel. What they're trying to do is choke out everyone else. It's why Image is up there publishing 70 to 80 books at times. They also are trying to, basically capture, keep all the indies from succeeding. The thing is, I think if Marvel published, capped it at 40 books, half of what they're doing today. Same thing with DC, same thing with Image. No more than 40 books. I think that Marvel would see about the same amount of money. Now you may say, wait a minute, but they're publishing fewer books. That means they're going to reach less of their audience because they've got books for this rainbow diverse audience. But the reality is they don't. Marvel's books are by and large a lot the same. So are DC's books. They're not targeting different demographics with all the Batman books. That's not at all what's going on. They are, capturing. They're choking out the indies. Same thing with Image. There's a lot of good Image titles that are just kind of vanishing on the shelves because they're piled in with so many others. And I think that not only would people go to the comic book shop and wind up buying about the same amount, they would just consolidate a little bit. I think you'd see Marvel's books bump up 10%. Regardless of what they cut, I think if they published 40 books instead of 80, the 40 books that they published would sell more and make more money. People would naturally just kind of gravitate to those. But the other thing that would happen is I think it would leave more room for the indies. And I understand that Marvel and DC are in competition with the indies, but I think that you would see, you would frankly see a healthier industry for the big two if they cared more about the indies. What you would see is comic book creators, you'd see them get more exposure. You'd see them get more quality. You'd see the rates go up for some of the indies because they're able to sell more volume. And then I think Marvel and DC would have a better feeder system. They'd have stronger talent coming up from the indies, as opposed to the way we have it now is almost a little bit inverse. A lot of the people who are working in the indies are people who've either done a run at Marvel and DC or not hireable there anymore, or they're people who got tired of Marvel and DC and they've elected to start putting their books out with Boom or with IDW or whoever. And so it's not the healthy influx of new talent. It's kind of the talent leaving the industry, or leaving at least the big two, is going there. And so the big two, it doesn't have the great feeder system to draw from anymore. And as a result, I think they get a lot of talent that's just not ready for prime time. They get people who can provide a couple of good illustrations, but maybe they really don't know how to work at a monthly schedule reliably, or they haven't figured out how to pencil in such a way that an inker could come in and really accent their art. So I think there's just a bunch of things in there where a healthier indie comic industry, a healthy indie comic feeder zone, would result in a healthier big two. And I think it starts with fewer comics. So that's why I read the Stan Lee bit. It's fun. I think there's a bunch of lessons to learn in there. You get somebody who's kind of a natural marketer, and it's kind of charming to hear that every now and then. We don't get a lot of that today. But also just as an interesting kind of juxtaposition against the current kind of comic world, and the fact that fewer comics actually would have business value for everyone, in my view anyway. So what do you think? If the big two published fewer comics, do you think we'd see a rise in the indies? Do you think people would take more of a chance and look more? Do you think more talent would go there? I'm not, again, I'm not, this is my theory. I'm not sure it's 100%. I'm not sure it's correct. But my theory is if these things happened, I think we'd see some positive results really for everyone. I also have to believe that if Marvel published 40 books instead of 80, same thing with DC, same thing with Image, I think we'd see a rise in quality in those books. I think you'd see maybe a little bit more time and attention and care being focused on some of these titles that, frankly, could use it. So anyway, that's my theory. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like and subscribe, of course, and thanks for listening.